Well, I think it's significant for both sides. This is the first outing of Xi Jinping to Europe in some time, and things have really changed since his last visit. For Macron, he's got 3 years left to run. He can't stand again. He likes to play the statesman. He has a particular view of how foreign policy should be conducted by France and by the European Union, and so he likes to be visible in these very important conversations. And there are serious things, of course, to discuss for both sides.
Let's drill down in particular on energy and the areas that China and France are increasing cooperation. What might we expect to come out of this visit?
I think that, I mean, as you said, France and China have a very, very long-standing collaboration on nuclear energy. And actually, if you look at France's energy profile, it's quite similar to China's. There's a much larger share of nuclear energy. But apart from the nuclear, there is hydro and an increasing interest in renewables. So it's a good fit for collaboration with China. And the big state-owned company, EDF, has built up a relationship of trust since the 1970s, actually, when they first signed a nuclear cooperation deal, and have been involved in building plants, in all kinds of operations, and quite important to China's build-out of its own civil nuclear energy. And I think that now that EDF is also branching out into other areas, we can expect more cooperation, for example, on waste management, on actually how you manage aging nuclear plants, because China's getting to that stage. There's a great deal around nuclear energy that requires collaboration and input, and I think China finds that quite helpful. EDF finds that quite profitable. So they can work together on a whole range of things, like managing nuclear materials and so on. But also, given that China now has a big lead in renewables, France has quite a lot to gain by collaborating on particularly wind energy with China. So, you know, building these relationships in what is otherwise quite a tricky moment between China and Europe is going to stabilize, at least for France, aspects of the relationship.
Both China and France have pledged to work towards pretty ambitious decarbonisation goals and transition towards renewable energy. I mean, is this any more than rhetoric? I mean, it's a bit motherhood and apple pie, isn't it? I mean, the world's emissions continue to accelerate. Are these any more than warm words?
Well, they are. I mean, you're right. Nobody is moving fast enough. Nobody is doing enough. China is meant to peak quite soon. We're all rather waiting for that moment because the level at which China peaks will determine how hard it is to get to net zero by 2060, as China has promised. France, of course, is part of the European effort, and it is, it is a serious effort. It takes a lot of time and energy and investment to change pretty much everything we do in terms of energy base, in terms of transport, in terms of food production, how we do agriculture. All of these are absolutely fundamental to everyone's economy, and we pretty much have to change them all. And one of the things which isn't really helping, to be honest, is the war in Ukraine, which is draining off budgets. It's making European countries think more about security than about climate. And, you know, there's a limited amount of money to spend, and a lot of that is going into defense. So one of the great hopes, I think, that Macron has of this visit is that Xi Jinping will use his considerable influence with Vladimir Putin and get him to withdraw and reach a peace settlement in Ukraine, so that we can go back to concentrating on climate. Because if this goes on, climate is definitely going to suffer.
If deals are done, cooperation is achieved on energy projects that you talked of earlier, how might that relatively tangible progress influence the wider and perhaps more difficult relationship?
Well, you know, building trust through collaboration, through practical projects is pretty important. And once both sides invest in a joint project, then they both have an interest in maintaining stability in the relationship. And, you know, the relationship between China and Europe, it's no secret that it is having quite a difficult patch right now. Macron is one of the more active players in that relationship, and he has always been, he's always embraced the idea that, which is a very French idea, that Europe should have its own foreign policy, its own security and defense policy, and so on. And that, I think, has, you know, it's difficult to maintain that if there are a lot of distractions. So these practical projects, the fact that you can demonstrate mutual benefit in such an important field as energy, helps to make the argument. It strengthens his hand in Europe if he can demonstrate that there are real benefits on both sides. Otherwise, there's a tendency to drift off into mutual recrimination and a loss of cooperation. So then we do get empty words. So I think it's very important that these projects be seen to flourish and that they be seen to deliver.